Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing The Hobbit There and Back Again from Office Stock. The Hobbit There and Back Again is a 1 to 4 player roll and write game which players are going to be rolling dice, drafting those dice in order to draw various shapes onto your board as you attempt to accomplish the scenario goals. But you're going to be going through not just 1, but 8 different adventures as you go through the story of The Hobbit in each of these varied scenarios. Each of them with small little rules differences. We'll talk about some of those things, but not a ton of them. But with that said, the basic idea, like I said already, is you're going to roll dice. We're going to have different components used in each scenario. For example, this one is not used in scenario 1. We're going to roll the dice, and then players are going to draft dice, taking those dice to get a variety of things. You could, for example, get swords in this scenario. You could take this die right now, take it to that particular player, and then take 2 swords, adding them to your personal supply. You now have 2 swords. The reason you're doing that is always going to be different scenario to scenario. But right now I'm showing you the basic mechanics, not the whys. We'll do the whys in a second. Outside of that, you can draw shapes over here. That's going to be one of the more common things you have, is going to be drawing shapes on your board. Again, each scenario is different, but in this case, for example, you're trying to connect the various hobbits to the burrow over here. You're trying to get them over here to Bilbo's house, and you have to draw lines that will connect them. For example, if I drafted this shape over here, I could go ahead right now and draw this shape going 1 and 2, because that's the shape. I can mirror, rotate, flip, and I draw that shape, and if I can get this one more, if I can even draw that little edge from another die, then I'll be able to connect that hobbit to that burrow and mark that off accordingly. Again, we'll come back to this specific scenario shortly, but let's just walk you through the rules. So the rules are, you roll the dice, the first player rolls a dice, you take a die, next player takes a die, next player takes a die. Let's say you're playing a 3-player game, you go back to the first player, the second player, you're going to be drafting the dice until all the dice are taken, at which point you'll rotate the first player and then roll the dice again to repeat the process. The things you can take are swords, which have different goals in each scenario. You have bread, which have different goals in each scenario. Bread's over here, for example. You have the wizard's hats, which have different ways they use in each scenario. And then you have pathways, which once again have different ways you use them in each scenario. So now that you understand the core basics, let's talk through this specific scenario so you can get a feel for what it is you're trying to do. In this scenario, everything's going to be listed in the rule sheet, but they have little reminders over here and then the scoring over here. In this scenario, you're trying to get the hobbits to the burrow over here, and you're trying to make sure that they are fed. But the game scenario, the scenario will end when a player has gotten all 12 of the dwarfs. I keep calling them hobbits, they're dwarfs. And then the player has gotten all 12 of the dwarfs. There's already 5 people who have commented down below that they're not hobbits, they're dwarfs. I know, I messed up, I apologize. When you get the dwarfs to this, to Bilbo's house over here, you're going to trigger the end of the scenario. But specifically, the way you get points in this is whenever you connect a dwarf to the burrow, you're going to mark off that the dwarf is connected. If there's bread, you'll also get points for the bread. If there's not, you'll X that out and you won't get points for that bread. Let's say on another turn, I go ahead and I draft 2 bread. Then I'll mark off that I have the bread, and that means that as we draft more things that allow us to connect various dwarfs to the hobbit hole, then we can go ahead and show that, look, this dwarf we got connected, and this time there was bread. Basically, you want to feed the dwarfs. You'll get the points for the dwarfs either way. You'll get an accelerating number of points for each dwarf, and then the bread's a little bit all over the place as far as the order of importance of it, but if you manage to time up the bread with the dwarf, you'll get the points for that. But then there's also going to be Thorin and Gandalf in these various corners of the board. They aren't necessary to trigger the scenario end, but for Thorin and Gandalf, if you get them over here, you have the same situation. They need more bread to be fed. There's also bonus points to whoever does them first. 2 points to whoever does those things first, as opposed to other players can still get the basic points, but not those bonus points. And then the swords. The swords over here, they're going to give you points depending on how many swords you accumulated. Up to 15 plus swords will get you 30 points on this little mark over here. There's other things you can do. There's the wizard hats. Wizard hats in general can be traded in for various symbols on this grid in the bottom left. And then in most scenarios, you have a way of trading in dice to be able to get an assortment of other symbols as well, limited to whatever number shown here. In this case, those 4 times. As you pass over various things on the board, we haven't shown this yet, but if we draw this right now and we move like so, then we're going to mark off and get those things, which could be bread or swords as well. So you're trying to do all of that, connect the dwarfs to Bilbo's house over here. Trying to do so as efficiently as possible as you chart out your pathways, because one thing we didn't really show over here is you can have pathways connecting into other pathways. If this pathway connects into that can all join together to connect. And so you're trying to plan out this kind of joint, not exodus, but whatever the opposite of an exodus is, where they're all coming together, joining up as they enter Bilbo's house. That's what you're doing in scenario 1, but the scenarios do change fairly drastically. And this is why I won't show you everything, because first of all, I don't want to spoil the surprise of various things, but just to show you some different basic mechanics you'll get introduced to as you play through the first few levels. As you move to another level over here, you have these lines where once you cross them, you can't go back. Many of the levels represent more of a journey through a pathway, as opposed to this one, which is kind of just join everyone together. This represents more of a journey. And in this one, swords are being used to fight off against the trolls, so you have a new mechanic going on over there. We also have various spots over here where you're going to be rolling the 12-sided die, marking off various storm spots which can get in the way of your journey, so you want to try to get ahead of those as fast as possible. And one of my favorite mechanics is when you abandon these dice all together, and you're going to be rolling this dice in order to determine which shape you have in order to fill out these shapes in this pathway over here. There's a few of the scenarios that do them, and they completely change up the game because you have one rule that applies to everyone as opposed to the dice drafting mechanism. That's the basic idea of the Hobbit there and back again. In most scenarios, you roll a bunch of dice, you draft those dice, you use those to accomplish the scenario goals, trying to do so better than the other players. In some scenarios, you won't roll these, and you'll instead just be rolling these in order to get everyone gets the same thing and apportion it how you want to see who can most efficiently build out their map, score the most points, and win in the Hobbit there and back again. I think it is important to note, by the way, this is scenario-based, not campaign or legacy-based, meaning at any point, pick up any mission and just play that mission. Replay whatever mission you want to do, just dive into it however you see fit, although I assume for most of us that will be going through the scenarios individually until you get to the end, at which point you'll replay them in whatever degree you want. Which means it's time for a review of what I like, don't like, can see others not liking, all of that, links and timestamps to everything down below. Let's start off with what I like about the game. The game's fun. I mean, that's a kind of a terrible thing to say what you like. It's just like, is it fun or not fun? But the game's just fun. It's a little bit on the lighter side, but there's also a lot going on, although I will say it's a little inconsistent. We'll get into that and things I don't like, but let's talk about what I like first. You're rolling dice and you're trying to figure out what you want to draft, depending on the player count. And I've played this at 2, 3, and 4 players. I've not done solo yet, but I've done 2, 3, and 4 players for this one. Depending on the player count, you are also looking at what you think other players want. Like 2-player is a very different experience than 4-player, because you really are paying attention to what do I think you want as you try to think through what you want to draft. But outside of that, every scenario, the tricky part about reviewing this is each part is very different in terms of what I like and how I like that thing. But let's start off with the basic over here. Let's start off with the part 1 over here. This is the only scenario I've actually played multiple times. I've gone through the whole game, but I've only played part 1 a bunch of times since I introduced it to new people. So I can also say that at least part 1 is very replayable. We'll talk more about my thoughts on that as we go through this. But over here, you're going to be trying to figure out the most efficient way to draft dice and group together your dwarfs. And it's much harder than you might think, because it's not about drawing straight lines. That's pretty simple. It's about trying to prioritize. Do you want to get Bilbo or, not Bilbo, Gandalf or Thorin? Do you want to get them there? Are you trying to pass over these extra symbols to make use of those? Or is it more efficient to just join them at the corners and then bring them all together? How you chart this out? When do you take the bread? That's a tough decision. Skipping over the low value breads can be important, but you can't always choose to skip it over. It's about drafting the dice and trying to figure out when the right time to take the right die is. Going for swords don't do anything this level. It's just a bunch of extra tokens, but they're worth points, and they can be worth a chunk of points, again, if you do so efficiently. So everything you do in this is all about trying to maximize the efficiency of what you take and how it helps you as you build out this board, and it's more challenging than you would think. It's not super straightforward, but it is super easy to do, and it's fun to draw out those shapes. It is fun to build out your board. It's fun to draw things. It's fun to look at the other players and see who's the more artistic one at the table, because there will definitely be people who are drawing the fanciest lines possible, and there's those who are just like, scribbling, yeah, I went there, yep, that's totally fine. You'll have people who are doing that, and you'll have people who are drawing like, darted, elegant pathways as they join together their dwarfs, and that's not even like, I'm kind of in the middle, honestly. I've seen people who are far worse and far more chaotic than I am, and I've seen people who draw beautiful boards, but you're gonna watch people build out their boards, draw out their pathways, and you're all doing that. So it's got the fun aspect of not the artistic aspect, although it has that too, but just a sense of progress as you draft a die and build out your board, but then it combines that nicely with the strategy. And then again, different levels have different things going for them, because you have to make choices as to what to prioritize. Without going too much into it, you're trying to get the dwarfs over here, but you're also trying to get these white stones area. If you try to rush forward, you might get extra points for being first to things, but you might have to pass up on doing other things along the way. Maybe you don't get all the trolls, and you're trying to min-max that. Like I said already, I love this mechanic over here. I I find this so rewarding in all the levels that use this. I find this a lot of fun to chart out these larger blocks as you try to path out what you're trying to do over here. So every scenario is a little different, but the core idea is fun, simple, accessible, super easy to learn, super fast to play. It's one of those games you just want to play another time and another time and another time. I don't think... No, I have played single sessions of this, but most of my sessions of this have been 2 to 3 in a row because you just have that desire to just play another one. And the rules for each one are fairly minimal. It'll take you 5 minutes to learn the rules for a new scenario. There are differences, but once you know them, it's pretty easy to remember and dive straight into it. For things I don't like in the game, the biggest thing I don't like in the game is going to be, I'll say there's 2 things. On the one side, I'll say that the game definitely is on the lighter side. That's not so much the thing I don't like, but there's only so much choice you have. As much as I said there's choices, you have to draft, you have to prioritize, and that's definitely true. It is a little on the lighter side. This is a little more of a filler game. It's fun, it's rewarding, it's simple, but that strategic depth, that sense of like, look at this chaos unraveling, that's definitely not there. It is a lighter game, just know what you're getting yourself into. I'd say more importantly, for me, the scenarios are inconsistently good. There are scenarios here I love, scenarios I like, and there's a few scenarios that I thought were a little basic. I'd say specifically, if you want me to call it out, I'm trying to decide if I want to bias you. I'm going to bias you. Part 1 I really enjoy. I've played that multiple times, like I said already, and I'd happily play it again. I think 2 and 3 were actually my least favorite, and then once I got past them, I really enjoyed the rest of the scenarios again. I found them all. Like, I think arguably 6 was my favorite. Arguably, although I'd need more plays to say for sure, because again, I've only played this one once. But I think I want to say 6 was my favorite. 5 was great. 4 was great. 2 and 3 were literally my arc with this game. Was I played the first scenario multiple times, and I really enjoyed it. Was looking forward to playing the rest of the scenarios. Dove into scenario 2 and 3, and I was like, that feels like a step back from scenario 1 for me personally. And then once I got to scenario 4, the arc picked up back again. And again, they're a little bit all over the place, but I really liked them a lot. So it was I was a little worried that only the first scenario was as enjoyable, because 2 and 3, I will for sure play them again at some point. But those are ones that I think I'll return to less often relative to the other ones that I've really enjoyed. And again, I think 6 is my favorite. 5 is pretty darn good. They're overall pretty good. As far as I can see, I was not liking, I'd say honestly the same thing I said already. It is on the lighter side. You have to know what you're getting yourself into. You also have to be mindful. Some of the things do play differently at different player counts. Like, especially things like, let's say, the storms, for example. These storms you have over here, the nature of the way the game works in terms of rolling a single die, these spaces are going to fill up a lot faster at lower player counts. At higher player counts. Sorry, at higher player counts, they're going to fill up a lot faster because you're getting less dice per player relative to the black die being rolled. To me, that's not a problem because that's just an issue of knowing the player count and playing differently, but all players are still playing on a level playing field, but that is going to change up the experience. Although I mentioned all players are playing on a level playing field, technically you can make the argument as well that I might choose to draw, like if you choose to start out over here and then the 6 gets rolled and I chose to start off over here, you're now blocked by the 6 and I'm not. So there is a degree of luck in there as well, and that luck will come through in later scenarios too. There's times where individual players roll the black die to get various shapes, and again, if you roll a 1 versus a 12 in those, you definitely do have individual luck. To me, it is far less frequent, but it does occur in this game, so just be mindful of that. As far as final thoughts, rating and final thoughts on the Hobbit There and Back Again, this is charming. It is not the best game ever, but it's super, super charming. I like what the game is doing. I like the world the game is built in. I like how quick it is to learn and teach and play. I like the fact that every time I've played this, whether I have or haven't actually done so, I have wanted to play it again. I have enjoyed the arc of going through it. I'm looking forward to playing most of them again. Even 2 and 3, I want to dive into again, although I wonder if 2 and 3 might be like done after this next time. I'm sure when I'm teaching it to other players, whatever. I like the game. I like the game. It's a fun, simple game that is rewarding to go through. There's 8 different scenarios, so that replayability fatigue if you dive into the same scenario again and again. Like, you'll have to play this game 48 times before you've played each... That math is wrong. I don't know why I said that. That's 10 to 60. You have to play this game 24 times before you've played any scenario for the 4th time if you're doing it all equally. That's a lot of plays of this. So I think it's got a good job of replayability. I'm also excited to see what more they can do with this engine and the regular. Like, do they want to bring this engine to the regular Lord of the Rings? It's straightforward, it's simple, it's variable, it's fun, it's engaging. I like it. I like the game overall. Speaking of which, and rating-wise, I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, I'm definitely going to recommend Railroad Inc. Railroad Inc. is a fantastic game that this feels very reminiscent of. It feels like it has that same core structure of the dice rolling, but also very different because players aren't using the same dice, players are not all using the same dice, rather players are drafting the dice. So slight differences, but definitely a very similar experience that I highly recommend. And then similarly, a game that was light, accessible, but thrived on the variability of it. Check out Almanac the Dragon's Road, or Almanac, I want to say it's the Crystal Peaks, I want to say, but Almanac is a game that has a few variations of it. That again it's a worker placement game, but it kind of takes you on a journey. It's light, accessible, but rewarding, and the variability keeps it there. So I think if you enjoy this, there's what to look at there as well. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.